back to the Independent Pianist. I'm your host, Cole Anderson, as usual, and today we are finally completing our traversal of the Opus 142 Impromptus by Schubert. So I've put up numbers 2, 3, and 4 already, and of course today is number 1. And I'm also going to upload another video that will contain all 4 Impromptus in one video so that you can hear them as a complete set as well. That's kind of what we've been kicking back and forth as we've been going through these Impromptus, is whether or not Schubert really intended them to be a complete set of pieces that could be performed together, or whether they were more standalone pieces. From a structural viewpoint, you can't really view this piece as anything other than a variant on a first movement sonata form. So it really does add a lot of weight to the idea that Schubert may have been kind of creating a variant on a sonata-like structure here. So in this Impromptu, the first of the set, Schubert starts out exactly as if he were beginning a grand sonata in F minor. So we get an introductory idea, and then we move right on to a recognizable sonata first theme. And everything happens as we expect it should up to the end of the Exposition section. So we get a long transition, which modulates and establishes the relative major key of F minor, A flat major. And then we get a contrasting lyrical second theme, so checking the boxes perfectly for a sonata form. And the first thing that you might notice, which is rather interesting, is that this second theme is actually directly derived from the first theme. In fact, it's not even altered that much at all. So this situation kind of reminds me of another kind of variant of sonata form that Schubert wrote, which is, of course, the Wanderer Fantasy. I also have a video to the Wanderer Fantasy on my channel. You can also find a link to that in the description box. But anyway, in the Wanderer Fantasy, a single rhythmic idea informs every single theme that follows the first. And it's very similar here. Schubert is tying the ideas together very intimately from a motivic point of view. So at this point, we would expect to move on to some kind of a development section. So what we get instead of a development section is basically a completely different piece, a duet set in binary form, which runs its entire course, entirely without obvious connections to the first part. There are some very subtle connections, so the accompaniment to this middle part does grow out of the first theme figuration. And there's a melodic idea in thirds in this middle part, which is a little bit similar to the idea of using broken thirds for the first theme at the beginning. But other than these very subtle connections, Schubert is doing something really totally different here. He's taking us to a very special emotional world, very much removed from everything that happened up to this point. But one very telling point here is that he's tracing another harmonic journey from a minor key to a major key. In this case, a very unusual key of A flat minor moves to A flat major. So after this full separate piece has run its course, we come back to the opening material again. And now we get what we would expect for a sonata form recapitulation. So we've jumped back onto the sonata form train, as you might say, except there's one kind of interesting exception. You might expect that the music would at this point stay in F minor, and then that would be the end of the piece. But instead of that, Schubert sidesteps rather early into F major, so the rest of the first theme area and the second theme are all in F major after the beginning. And he does not end the piece at this point, as you would expect if this were just a normal sonata form movement. Instead, we get another abbreviated return to the duet part from the middle. And now it's transposed, and we get again a trajectory from F minor to F major, so echoing what just happened in the recapitulation passage. Then there's another brief return to the opening material. There's a coda in F minor, and the music fades away. So this is a very interesting and unusual form that Schubert has chosen for this movement, and it presents some problems, I think, to the analysis. This is one of the few pieces that I actually think somewhat justifies the often heard criticism that Schubert was too repetitive. You hear this quite a bit, and actually I think most of the time Schubert was not any more repetitive than Mozart or Haydn or Beethoven. I think what people really tend to pick up on and perceive as being repetitive is the much wider breadth of Schubert's melodic approach and the way in which he approaches these larger forms in a more melodic and less typically goal-oriented and developmental style. And I'll talk about this more when I get to doing some of Schubert's sonatas, but in this case, we actually get a somewhat more repetitive form on the face of it. And what is the rationale? Is Schubert just being repetitive for the sake of being repetitive? I don't think so, actually. I interpret this piece as being a kind of personal commentary, a free commentary of Schubert's on the idea of the sonata form, in particular on the idea of tension between keys, which is implicit in the sonata form. In a typical sonata form, if you think about it, there are two different melodic ideas which represent opposing harmonic poles. So in a major key, it would be tonic and dominant. Or in a minor key like this, tonic and related major. And the coexistence of these two opposing harmonic worlds in close conjunction creates a feeling of dissonance. Dissonance in the sense of needing to resolve, needing some kind of resolution. So this feeling of dissonance in a normal sonata would play out in a development section, and then it would be finally resolved in a recapitulation in which both themes return in the tonic key. So if we think of it another way, in a typical classical sonata, the reaction to the juxtaposition of two very different keys is struggle, development, and instability, which is then resolved. But Schubert seems to be suggesting in his piece that there is no real permanent resolution to be expected between these kinds of oppositions. Instead of a development section, we get a meditation on the duality of major and minor, light and dark, joy and sadness, fulfillment and denial. In this way, the recapitulation section and the second appearance of the duet actually only serve to render the home key more unstable. It's the opposite of what normally happens in a sonata form movement, and we are left in constant uncertainty about what the true home key is. Is it F major or F minor, or what is going on? Although we finally do end in F minor, it's not conclusive by any means. It's not a powerful ending. It's soft and it kind of trails away. And we have the feeling that things could shift at any moment. So I think this piece really encapsulates Schubert's great psychological contribution to the classical ideas he inherited from the Viennese masters and that he explored in his own larger scale sonatas. So how this plays out is that he rejects the kind of clean resolution of internal strife which the sonata form presents, and instead shows us the uncertainty that he felt at the core of life. So major and minor keys, for example, are only two sides of the same coin, and we can really move from one to the other in a heartbeat. There's no easy resolution. There's no kind of overwhelming darkness to light narrative, for example, that we see in things like Beethoven's Fifth Symphony. Instead, it's a much more ambiguous kind of narrative, and one that challenges our perception of norms like the sonata form. So please do like the video and comment. Let me know what you think about my ideas I'm putting here. I know they might seem kind of far out to some of you, but it's just kind of what I get, what I feel when I play this piece. Also, be sure to listen to the complete set of impromptus and let me know what you think. If you feel that they hang together well as a complete set, or if you think it doesn't work at all, I'd be interested in knowing your thoughts. But other than that, please do just stay tuned next week for another video on another great piece of music. And you're always welcome to become a financial supporter to the channel as well. The easiest way to do that, of course, is at www.patreon.com/independent pianist. Even a few dollars a month would be really helpful for helping me to continue bringing you this content. So thank you for that. And until next time, this is Cole Anderson signing off.